Maybe that you, Maria?
Hi, that's me.
Welcome
Yeah.
everyone to Dog's Voice. Please turn off your audio for now as we get started. Appreciate that. And we will be able to talk later and ask questions and do various things. Dog's Voice is a bi-monthly talk, and every other week I will do a presentation focused on my passion, which is stress release for dogs, or other topics pertinent to the dog training industry. And every other week there is a guest speaker, and today we'll be chatting with Maria Alomajan from New Zealand on Stress Plus. And I kind of ruined your last name there, so Maria, how do you pronounce it in New Zealand?
That's fine. Alomajan.
Alomajan. I love that. That's much more classy than the way that I said it. So,
Right.
So welcome everybody. We have quite a few coming in, and we'll start. I'd like to introduce Maria. She is a certified dog behavior consultant and accredited dog trainer with the IAABC, which we're all familiar with. She's an accredited dog behavior consultant and accredited training instructor for companion animals in New Zealand. CANZ. What does that stand for?
That just stands for Companion Animals New Zealand.
Okay.
However, that is the only official accrediting body for our industry in New Zealand.
Interesting. Okay. And your passion is in stress and its effect on behavior, as is mine, especially aggression and fear. And you enjoy mentoring trainers moving into the behavior field. You are an author of the book Dogs in Action, Working Dogs and Their Stories. And it is amazing, frankly.
Oh,
Research, your research took you, I love this, that to experience with police dogs, sled dogs, cancer detection dogs, explosive detection dogs, and poacher tracking dogs in East Africa. You've worked with dogs in numerous countries, and you are a huge fan of the CED, which I love.
I am.
And discussing dogs and information gathering part, which is doing the analysis, which is one of my favorite things as well. Maria and I met through Peter Clark from Australia, and I believe it was Jet that we were going to do a CED on way back many years. And in the interim, we have done many CEDs with clients together. And so today, Maria is going to talk on stressed brains can't learn. So would you like to add anything to what I just said or any comments?
Just on the number of CEDs that we've worked on together, I was going to mention this at the end, but I'll mention it now. Diane and I'm in New Zealand, Diane's in the States, obviously, and we always find a time appropriate way so that we can work together, and Diane can run a CED for clients of mine, which I absolutely love. And probably the most challenging one we had was some lovely clients of mine, friends of mine who moved to Germany, if you recall, Diane. So they were in Germany, I was in New Zealand, and you were in the States. And that was very successful. So I'd like trainers, behavior consultants that may be listening to this to know that, you know, that's possible and it works really well.
That's and Maria is also in my book where I talk about, we did a little session not only with some dogs that a teacher had from a small school in New Zealand, but also they were so impressed that they added it to their day at the little school, and there were quite a few differences in how the children responded and reacted to their schoolwork. So that's very interesting too, because stress applies to everyone, doesn't it? Children, people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So so go ahead when you're ready. I think go ahead and start your PowerPoint because it is very interesting.
Thank you. I will get started. We only have an hour, and this is something I could talk about for many hours. So I'm going to run pretty quickly through the slides, as really what I'd like to do is pique your interest. I would like more people in the industry to become curious about this process, to kind of think about how this might be relevant to either your dogs if you're watching, or clients' dogs. And then you can always get back to us with more questions, or we can provide you with more information. So as Diane said, I've titled this "Stressed Brains Can't Learn." Sorry about the dog barking.
Oh no.
It's authentic, right?
That's what we need, dog barking.
They're playing upstairs. So stress, and for the purpose of this presentation, I am just talking about chronic toxic stress, or intolerable stress. Very quickly, because it's not a presentation on stress, there are 3 different types of stress. Eustress, which is good stress. It's challenging. It's something like me learning how to try and get this presentation up today quickly, which is rewarding in the long run and can result in personal growth. Tolerable stress is kind of in between. It's a negative experience. It's distressing in a little way, but the person, the animal, has the ability to cope, and that can also result in growth. So that might be, you go to a new park, they're not really sure, but then a friendly dog runs over and says, "Hi, come and play," and they go and play. So that was tolerable because at the beginning they were unsure, but then they went off and they had a great time. Toxic stress, which is negative stress that is distressing to the animal. They are unable to cope. They are unable to access coping strategies. Potentially there's damage from previous stress, or there is we'll call it chronic. So there's a buildup of, or a stacking of too much stress, and stress that the animal is not capable of coping with. And that's what we're talking about today. This type of stress compromises all these critical functions that are required for, I'm pointing like this to my screen, for, oops, sorry, let me just go back there. Required for healthy living, and for those of us in the industry, required for behavior modification and training. So memory, hearing, digestion, sorry. I've lost my word. I lost my word there.
We've got the gut. Yes.
So these, I will come back to this, but
it's important, isn't it, Maria, that all of these functions are so important to really changing behavior, instead of looking like you're changing behavior with just diving into techniques that might or might not be efficient or right now. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This type of stress changes the brain, changes the body, changes behavior. And so our role in the industry is, I call it rebuild the brain, which is something that science tells us is very possible. And I'll come on to that. Heal the body and change behavior. So for people in the industry, if you have an animal in that chronic stressed state And I know we haven't run through the symptoms of that. There is a list of those on my website. Diane has also got other presentations on her YouTube channel on that topic, and we just didn't have time to go through it today. So if you have an animal where they can't think, they've got no impulse control, their memory, they've got no long-term memory, you know, their cognition is shut down, their digestion is shut down, they can't learn. So if we dive straight into these methods like counter conditioning, cooperative care, that these are all training terminology. Any of you who aren't trainers.
Should I put my thing in?
Oops. Sorry, I was listening to the commentary there. My question, or the question I'd like you to think about, is how successful can those methods be when you're working with an animal in this state? So, and I'm just going to leave that out there for a second to think about, because surely, and this is why I love talking about this, this is just what makes sense to me, and this is how I work, this is how Diane works. I'm not saying it's the be all and end all, it's just how we get great success with animals that are very challenged in this world. Mm-hmm. If they can't learn because of chronic stress or this stuff, if you de-stress them first, you open up the pathways for thinking, for memory, for impulse control, for learning, digestion, and then we move on to training. And what we will find, and there's a case study later on, is that sometimes even once the dog is out of this kind of state of chronic stress and in a more, when the allostatic load is balanced, some of those trouble behaviors fall away because they're better able to cope with the world and they have more coping strategies. So releasing stress, what we were looking at 2 slides ago when we were talking about the very common training methods that we use for helping dogs that are finding the world challenging. We've got releasing stress is what we're talking about and how we should do that before reducing stress. And that is something that I have conversations with people about a lot. Because they're like, but we're doing that, you know, we're keeping the dog under threshold and we're teaching the dog how to, you know, give us the paw to have the nail clipped, or we are, you know, sitting on the bench, not walking down the beach, which is fantastic. And I love the fact that our industry now as a whole, and that is trainers, behavior consultants, shelters, vets,
I'm going to go up here.
are all now thinking about how we reduce stress for the animal that's in front of us. What I don't have lots of conversations about is how do we release the stress that the animals are feeling.
Oh, I lost you. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Yes. You're good.
Reducing.
Can we go back just a little bit? What is
Yes.
the difference between releasing stress and reducing stress in your mind? Because I know that's a hard concept for a lot of people to grasp. It's
So
important.
reducing stress, which I've written here, is managing the animal's external environment to minimize the amount of toxic or intolerable stress that they experience in day-to-day life.
So yeah, on day-to-day, yes, okay.
Day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
So we have all those counter conditioning, desensitizing, training games, cooperative care. You know, we look at the lighting, we change the music, which is amazing, but this doesn't reduce the stress from an already chronically stressed dog, and it doesn't put a chronically stressed dog in the right mindset. You haven't set their brain to be able to really respond to these methods.
Okay.
So releasing the stress comes before reducing stress. And that's the process of releasing built up or chronic mental or body tension with the goal of reaching homeostasis. So what that means is that's our internal equilibrium. All of our bodies are designed to naturally seek an equilibrium, to have a kind of a neutral allostatic load, which means that we can function to maximum capacity. If we bring the dog back to neutral by de-stressing them, then they're in the perfect position to start learning. And what this does, how it works for me, is that, of course, and there'll be trainers out there that say, yep, we had great, I've got all these clients, all these case studies. I can tell you I haven't de-stressed the dog, but I have had great success with counter conditioning and everything else. Yes, that is absolutely true. And you can do it. I'm not saying you can't do it, but this way, if you release the stress first, you kind of decrease the amount of time it takes for the animal to do that learning, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's really the difference between a functional and a dysfunctional dog. So we are actually making, by releasing stress, the dog more functional so that they can cope in real life, because chronic stress means that they've leveled out and they can't come down, where we can get a lot of health issues, versus dysfunctional, where they just cannot cope, as you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's exactly right. And the CED process, which I'm going to move my slides here, because we'll get onto that if we just hang on to that thought. So now hopefully you're a little bit curious and you're thinking, how do I do that? This is not something that's familiar to my work. How I do it, how I work, how Diane works, is the canine emotional detox, building resilience, which thankfully now is something that people in the industry are talking about, yes, and aiming for joy. You very seldom see a joyous dog who is finding the world a challenging place to be.
Yeah, I say a lot, that dog is not joyful, or I don't see the dog having a good time in their life. They're just going along, or they have a routine. They're not really getting any joy out of life.
Absolutely.
Body language that you see when that happens.
And there's a case study coming out with the dog where you can see in his tail there is just no joy, no joy.
Yeah,
there is now. So canine emotional detox, I don't want to talk too much on because that's Diane's baby. These are the elements: games, play, movement, sleep, problem solving, nutrition, sensory experiences. This is all part of the canine emotional detox. And what this is, just in my words, Diane, and please feel free to jump in here, for people that are unfamiliar with it, that might have tuned in, is this is a 3-day protocol, starts at 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. And you and your dog will follow this path, this combination of activities throughout the day. And this protocol is personalized to your dog and the needs of your dog or dogs. I think the maximum I've done with Diane is a 3-dog family. So it is possible to do multi-dogs, but that
4, but it's tough. It's a lot of strain on everyone. I do want to add just one thing, that it is the order in which these things are done that releases stress after years of study and research. It's not the elements themselves. You can pull the elements themselves out, but you'll take a longer time to release the stress. And it's a minimum of 3 intense days, and the intensity is for a reason. But it could be 5 or 8, or the longest I've had is 21 days with a very difficult case. Or so, yes, just wanted to verify that, because a lot of people don't understand that it is the order in which these are done that makes it effective.
Thank you. And that is, before I met Diane, I was already on the path of working the brain. And when I assess dogs and I work with dogs that are struggling with the world, I am looking at what is going on in their brain. When I met Diane, which was amazing, all this kind of came together. And now we have a protocol to follow, which gives direction, and also not direction, but it gives you a foundation for moving forward. And all the elements within that combination are elements that you can continue with your dog, so that they have, and Diane has an article on this called The Dog's Perfect Day. Anything else you'd like to add on that, on your baby there?
No, it just becomes, after the CED, then this same cycle can become the dog's ideal day to keep them in homeostasis and to reduce stress as they move through life, right? Because they're happy and joyful, they're better able to cope with life. And then the techniques and the behavior modification are then more effective as well.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the canine emotional detox phase, building resilience. And for those that haven't kind of thought about this, that means developing a better ability for your animal to deal with stress, flexibility when it comes to problem solving, and greater emotional well-being. And fun fact, because I like to add in fun facts to make things interesting, resilience work, this work can be done at home. And that is a huge relief often. It certainly reduces stress for people that don't want to go out into the environment to start working with their dog. You know, if the environment outside of your house, outside of your front gate, if you live in a great big city like New York, where if you walk out of your apartment building, it's all on, you know, the ability to counter condition and desensitize and do all those things becomes very difficult. This work that we're going to be talking about, that we are talking about, is work that you do at home in your dog's most predictable, safe environment. Mm-hmm. And that reduces stress in itself for the family and for the dog. Mm-hmm. And I've had a number of clients where I've said to them right at the beginning, so you won't be taking your dog out for a month. And they're like, You can imagine, right? It's like, my dog's going to have so much energy. How's my dog going to be tired? I do this.
And just the opposite occurs.
Absolutely. And I say to them, right, you're going to have this protocol, and then we're going to have this process where you are going to be draining your dog's energy by using their brain and their body in a different way. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, the feedback from people, even just that with some dogs just not going out, you know, going out is stressful when they don't have the capacity to problem solve, to build memories aside from fear. You know, that is difficult. So here we have some great work that you can do at home. One of my favorite topics. So we've got resilience. How does that work? When your brain is stressed, and I say any animal's brain is stressed, the thinking part, or the limbic, when you're in a limbic state, your let me start that again. Your prefrontal cortex, the red part here, this is a dog's brain, not a human brain, gets shut off. because thinking is slow, acting is fast. Evolution-wise, there was no time to stop and think, is this grizzly bear friend or foe? Should I run? You just ran. And that's basically, you know, where stress comes from in your brain. So that part gets shut off. So there's no thinking involved. That part of the brain, and the reason I singled that out to talk about today, because it's my favorite, is the area of the brain that is involved in problem solving, impulse control, and executive function. So if you stop and think about challenging behaviors, clients that you have, dogs in your family that you're struggling with, is it an issue that may involve problem solving, impulse control, executive function? And I'll get on to explain executive function. Here's another little fun fact that I just threw in here. The human brain is 2% of body weight, but it burns 25% of our energy. So that is another reason why using your dog's brain chews up a huge amount of energy. Problem and impulse control. Now I've put these two together for the sake of time, because we just have an hour and I didn't want to talk for 2 hours. If we engage our animal in activities that promotes neurogenesis, which is basically growth. And so remember, right back in the beginning slide, I was talking about rebuilding the brain. These activities promote growth in this area, the prefrontal cortex, which had previously been shut off by chronic stress or being in a limbic state, that fight or flight state. Then what we do is we teach a dog to actively work through challenges versus just reacting to challenges. It builds self-confidence, teaches a dog to inhibit themselves, which is that to just stop and think. Because there's less internal noise, because their brain is wide open, they can stop and think about how they want to respond to this challenge in front of them. They develop a broader repertoire of behaviors, so they have options to choose from. You know, how many dogs have we met in our behavior assessment where maybe they will just sit, you know, because that's all that's been reinforced. So they have very few options when it. Here are some examples of activities, because I thought I'd just show you some of the things we're talking about, of activities that promote that growth in the prefrontal cortex, the neurogenesis there, problem solving. So this is Luigi figuring out how to get to
Good boy. Good one.
Here's another one. Oh, sorry. The good old mat roll, what I absolutely love, and I use this exercise as part of dogs. I could have thrown in a whole load of examples because dogs do this in so many different ways that gives us so much information on their approach to the challenge. The owner, his father, wanted me to have the collar and lead on at this stage because this dog had been quite reactive to people, which he wasn't, which I didn't have.
Isn't it? Yeah, yeah. And
just the last one, because who doesn't love a really clever border collie? So of course we almost always have to pop this in there.
And they're always so fast.
So fast.
Okay, no problem. I solved this.
Yeah, okay, yep, right, okay. Level 5 challenge. And these particular games, like the Nina Otterson puzzles that start at level 1 up to I think it's level 5, you don't have to have a border collie to be able to do this. All sorts of dogs can master these, and you see the progress through. I'll show you in a case study very shortly, where a dog just started simply, I could only put an empty box on the floor and put some chicken inside it, and he couldn't even just walk over and get
I
the
believe
chicken
that.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. But that's what you were talking about when they just can't think. They can't learn. Cognition isn't as acute as it should be.
Yep. And actually, and just saying, if there are people, you know, that work with rescues, have adopted rescues, that they may be super fearful of people or novel stimuli in the environment. And this is the type of work that you want to be doing with them at home before you even think about going out into the world. And I know possibly there hasn't been a lot of access to these types of, this type of way of working. But now you have it. And hopefully the idea is that we can start to spread the word about this, you know, working with our dog's brain and reducing stress before anything else, releasing stress, getting them out of that chronically stressed state. So executive function, which was one of the 3 things that I mentioned previously. The prefrontal cortex is the hub for this as well. So just imagine this is shut off, and I'll just go around. This is a graph for humans, but I've circled the ones that we know are relevant to our dogs, and I'll just work through them. Adapting to changes, so responding and adjusting to changes in the environment. Regulating attention, the ability to maintain and focus on a task. Working memory, this is really important. This is remembering the steps as you do a task. And this is super relevant because with our dogs that are stressed, they lose the capacity to consolidate short-term memory, working memory, into long-term memory. And that goes right back to the beginning slides where we're talking about starting those modalities, counter-conditioning, desensitizing, all those activities with when you've got a dog that actually doesn't have the capacity to store those working memories into long-term memories. And a great example of this is I will often hear trainers and clients say, let's just take, for example, I've got a dog that's reactive to other dogs on lead at the beach. Lovely trainer, totally, you know, nice qualified trainer, has the client, takes them down to the beach, feed, keeping under threshold, have a lovely working session for an hour, come home, explain to the owners the process, and either the client or the trainer could then the next day or whenever the next session is, take the dog down to the beach and then woof, 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 it's all on again. And they'll say, but I don't understand. He did that so well yesterday, or he did that so well for me, or he did that so well for you. I don't understand. And that is because they are responding to the reinforcement in the moment, but they are not storing those steps. And they are most certainly not consolidating what they have learned because they don't have the capacity to while they are sleeping. And that's when the consolidation from working to long-term memory forms. Moving on to cognition and problem solving, something that we really need when we want to train our dogs' alternative behaviors. Starting and shifting tasks. I think a lot of you will be familiar with this. My dog focuses on the cat. I'm calling the dog and I'm asking the dog for a hand touch, or we're asking the dog to like do a U-turn, and the dog's still focused on the cat. That's because they no longer have the ability to switch tasks. And this one here, self-regulation, I haven't circled because that is an internal state subjective, and we can't talk to that in another animal. However, I do believe that regulating thoughts, feelings, and responses is something that we can visually see in the dogs that we're working with. An example of that is the Shakeoff. So a chronically stressed dog, many of them I've worked with won't shake off. They don't have that capacity, because it's almost, I go like this when I think of them, because everything is tense and tight, and they don't have the self-regulation function available to do that. And science shows us that the Shakeoff reduces their heart rate. An animal will, not just dogs, I've seen other animals do it, will experience, I witnessed this in Africa actually, with some gazelle who were chased by a predator. They crossed the road and then they stopped and they shook off. And I thought, wow, that's what dogs do. So to me, that's why I've highlighted it rather than circled it. And I think also internal noise falls into this category. When an animal has a lot of internal noise, like pain, I think pain's a really good example of that. Their ability to kind of think, I'll probably get slammed for saying it in that manner, but in a broad sense, to respond to the world in a way they would do without pain is clearly observable to those of us that are working with animals.
Yeah.
And so here are some case studies. This dog, and I put the timeline in here because this was an example where the family just could not do a CED. There was a toddler, a brand new baby born into the house. The mother was looking after the children. The father is a barrister, and he was tied up in court. So there was just no capacity there for a CED to take place. There also was not the capacity to implement a program at home. So this is an example of a dog where I followed the same protocols, and I would bring this dog and his brother over to my own house where it was peaceful and quiet. And we would have 3 to 4 hour sessions where we would follow the cycle through. So we're following the same protocol, but 3 to 4 sessions, 3 to 4 hours, couple of sessions a week. And as you can see in the timeline, it took 2 months of those type of sessions to get to the place that we usually get over 3 days with the CED. And that is to this beautiful state here of REM. So when I was assessing this dog, these are pretty simple puzzles. And this was talking about his tail. He had no joy left. And he has this beautiful big curly tail that goes over his back. And so and these are some notes taken from their intake form. So more anxious than ever, circling the baby buggy and growling at dogs on the beach, generally stressed and unhappy. And I was so grateful to the family when they had so much going on to also be mindful that one of their dogs was needing help. So along with this process, you can see that he became, I'm trying not to use his name, he became an expert puzzler. This is him with our gorgeous chiropractor, Katie. I don't know if she's tuned in. Look at that face.
Smiles.
And
the eyes. Yeah.
And this is the 24th of October, when he went home after our session, and REM, which is our dream. And following on from that, this little message that I've done a screen grab at the top, which I wouldn't normally do, but I thought it was so important. This was the 28th of October. After that Friday session, they were taking Barry down to their beach house, which is where he had these challenging behaviors. And they sent me this message with him lying on the sofa saying, Barry has been so great down here, quite relaxed and playful. And he had stopped circling the buggy. He had stopped growling at other dogs, and he had started playing with his toys again and just running up and down the beach. So that is what I was talking about. That's a case study of what I was talking about earlier, where we removed the stress and the what would be labeled problem behaviors dissolved. And so a more classical approach to something like that may be immediately to take Barry to the beach with the buggy and try and start counter conditioning.
I never get tired of seeing that, and that's when you have the relaxation.
The REM, I just could watch it
to process all the good information he got from you over that 2-month period.
That last, it's so clear in my memory. The last Friday, it wasn't the last session we had, but that Friday session before he went to the beach, he halfway through, he looked at me and I was like, yeah, dude, go and jump on the sofa and have it. You know, I was like, yep, that's fine. You're done for today. Go and jump on the sofa. He jumped on the sofa. He fell into a deep sleep and started REM for the first time in this 2-month process. And I contacted his family and I said, I'm not bringing him home until he wakes up. And they were like, okay, yep, that's great. and that's what we did. And then it was that night when he went home and he continued the REM, they sent me that video and they was like, they you know, were asking, is this what you're talking about? And
I've had people say, oh no, there's something wrong with my dog. He's more relaxed. He's getting back into homeostasis. He's more like himself. He's more like he should be and feel.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, because that was one of the comments with Barry. It was like, Barry's back, you know, his tail's up, he's playing with toys. This is the dog that we used to have. So yes, those comments definitely come in. This is another case study of little Valentina. I can mention her name because she's I do share custody with her. Yeah. But when I first met her, some of the challenges she had was she wouldn't eat. She was toileting inside all the time. She was constantly walking on 3 legs. She would hold one of her back legs up. And she was generally anxious about the whole world. So at one of the specialist groups, they just call her shaking dog because she would just shake all the time. And she's in this jumper here, you can't see underneath, but she was literally like a little skeleton. And her mum was working really hard to try and make the world a better place for her. And thankfully, we kind of got together and came up with a bit of a plan. So she was just so skeletal. Her with a very, very simple puzzle. And you can see she's kind of looking at me like, what? What do you want to do? This is Valentina now, puzzle master extraordinaire, out there to solve any problem. And this was her not that long ago when we were out at the park. And as you can see, she is queen of the world. So once the stress was released, this was really a case of building up her capacity to problem solve, building up her capacity to think about what she was doing and to know that she had options. All of these things dissolved. So we did the nutrition is a whole separate thing, but we found something that she would eat, but the toileting inside stopped. The walking on 3 legs, which I had said, if we do, give me, a couple of months, we'll do this work. If her leg doesn't go down, because I was sure it was like a nervous tick, or, it was anxiety driven, then we'll look at x-rays and everything else. But sure enough, as soon as she had a broader capacity to deal with the world, the leg came down. When I say she used to be generally anxious about the world, now she is quite happy to tell the world everything. We have a huge dialogue. So the other thing, she started talking, which was amazing. And her mum was like, oh, she talks now. Well, and we haven't been able to shut her up, frankly. So she will be, I need a chew. I'd like to do some puzzles. It's time to go for a walk. So she has dialogue, and she's a much happier dog. And what we do know with this toileting inside, when there is a big change to her environment, when things become unpredictable, say builders move in next door and there's a lot of noise and a lot of flapping and things going on, Valentina will toilet inside. And that's a sign to me that something in her environment, because this is a tiny little dog that will go out in a rainstorm to go to the toilet. So that's a sign to me that there is stress in her environment that we need to address.
Because fear never leaves the amygdala. And if there are instances that something is occurring, again, that is almost like PTS, because dogs don't have PTSD. It's a post-traumatic, right?
Yep.
She remembered that. And so she would go back to that pathway that she was walking down before. But she had other options, other neural pathways now to go down.
Yes.
Quite interesting. Yeah.
And it is, and we haven't had a chance to talk about that, but just since you brought it up, that whole stress changes the shape of your brain, and
Yes.
not the big physical, but the neuro. Sorry, I can't get my words out today. I'm sorry.
You're doing good.
Neurons.
Neurons.
The neurons die off. The amygdala grows, which Diane was just saying, is the hub of fear, and the hippocampus starts to shrink, which is the area that we want for long-term memories. And that's a whole other talk, but is involved in this process. And just a last case study here of that Diane and I worked together just recently, which is still a lovely work in progress. And this was 2 dogs in a household that had started fighting, or one dog had started aggressing on the other one, to the point of needing some vet visits. They were both dog reactive when they were out and about, particularly on lead. There was concern around one of the dogs and the cats within the house.
Yeah.
Yep. It was a multi-leveled case that we're working, and there was some resource guarding issues, and that was mostly around favorite people. But we went through the CED, and their lovely mum is continuing the work. And here we see both of them out and about. Sorry, that says copyright. Her mum has purchased this photo, but I just didn't have a chance to change it over. Here they are out and about at a dog show, and they're out together, and there is no reacting on the lead. Here is beautiful, actually, sister of my puppy, I have to say, in a lovely snuggle on the sofa with the cats, going back to concern around cats. And here's a gorgeous video of the 2 of them together, so not having to be separated, not fighting, but in this beautiful kind of sharing, chewy, rolly, relaxed, chewing on a towel or blanket, which I'm not sure if they're even supposed to be doing that, but got some lovely music going in the background. And what a joy. What a joy for us to see.
And the cats wouldn't have happened. I mean, that cat photo is amazing. And I know that Libby wouldn't mind us saying that between the 3 of us, and it becomes a teamwork between the dogs and the trainer and any other people you bring in, and a pet parent, that this was a very difficult case.
it was multi-layered.
Mm-hmm.
And we discovered there was potentially some health issues with one of the dogs, and the living environment was reasonably restrictive for separation. So yes, it was a really complex case.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me so happy to see the progress.
Yeah, me too. We love that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to finish off with something that isn't very often talked about, but totally relevant to this, is completing the stress cycle. So bringing the nervous system back down to baseline. And I'm saying this for if you are out and about with your dog, or even if you're at home and your dog has a toxic or an intolerable or even tolerable stress, a big emotions event, then that doesn't leave your dog. It can also take, some of the science has shown it can take up to a week for that to present itself. So you're walking down the street with your dog, lovely walk on lead, and then another dog comes rushing out to their gate. It's an open wire gate, and your dog's like, back, and you're like, oh, and then you walk past and you're like, oh, that's fine. And and your dog's trotting along, and you bring your dog home, thinking, oh, well, that, or probably, maybe not even thinking about it. Oh, that just happened at that gate, and maybe I won't walk there tomorrow. But that event that has caused that huge burst of adrenaline and cortisol in your animal has not left your animal. And so the last thing you want them to do is to go to sleep, because those are the memories that they will consolidate. And this is probably the only time you will ever hear me say, don't let your dog sleep.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the time, sleep is so important. What you really want to be doing is consciously thinking about how you can complete that stress cycle, how you can bring them back down. And we know that, and Diane has graphs on this, that cortisol can take up to 8 hours to leave the system, sometimes up to 72 hours. If you have an event that doesn't even present until 5 days later, and you're like, wow, that's out of the blue. Why is my dog gone crazy today?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to know when that cortisol and adrenaline has left the system. But we do know that if you provide them with opportunities to work through it, chewing, decompression walks, scatter feeding and nose work is amazing. And I say down there, relaxation protocols and breathing. Active breathing engages the prefrontal cortex. So although not commonly done, there is a protocol that I haven't put a video on here where you can teach your dog to inhale, basically. Food puzzles, massage, tea touch. This is just actually my little puppy up here who is de-stressing after a very hard life living with me. Something happened. He probably didn't get his breakfast on time, and we've had to bring that nervous system back down. And then up in the corner is my lovely late Gracie, who was just very happy to have access to all those puzzles to work out all of her stress. And down the bottom here, you see Barry and his brother Hank at their beach. Happy as Barry, we could say.
Yeah, he is a happy looking dog now, isn't he? Now all the work put into him paid off. And it's just several days to weeks of a dog's life. It's nothing. I mean, when we're practicing agility or search and rescue, it takes months and months to get the dog to do what to get to the level that you want them to. So why do people think that stress can be released so quickly and that behavior can change so quickly? Because behavior fluctuates, doesn't it? And there's a lot more going on there. So these are wonderful to see.
And just for those of you who may have started this type of work, or it's new to you and you're like, how do I know that I'm making progress? Just going back to this graph, which is the executive function, which is important to me because I recently experienced a concussion, and which is why I have to apologize. I've been losing my words throughout the presentation, but I'm still in recovery from that. And my executive function was pretty much gone. So I know firsthand what it's like to experience that. We have resting respiratory rate, another thing I didn't go into in this presentation, but something that I always work on with clients and as part of the CED, is this gives us a really good, easy to find measure of how relaxed your dog is within the most predictable, safe environment. So you can watch that drop as you do the work. They're calmer, they're offering more shakeoffs. If they experience some kind of stressor, they're quicker to recover. They're able to focus and shift focus. That's a huge one for trainers. They're able to self-inhibit and make better choices, another good one for trainers, and they're less reactive. And when a dog is less reactive, you know that you're on a successful path to deconstructing those, what we'd label undesirable responses that they are giving to stimuli in their environment. And that's what we want. We want to deconstruct all of that.
I want to say just one thing about shaking off. You'll see more shakeoffs as I don't like to see a lot of shakeoffs because I know that there's something stressful in the environment happening, or I got through that. So what did they get through? I'd like to see less shakeoffs or no shakeoffs anymore, that the dog feels that they don't have to. That's when I know the dog's becoming more relaxed.
More resilient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or less stress. Yeah. So what I'd like to do now, though, I want you to finish your sentence, but I'd like to open it up to questions. So if anybody has a question, please go ahead and unmute yourself, or let me know if you want to speak, or put it in the chat room, or in the live stream. Just type out your question in the chat, and we will get to you, or comment, or whatever you would like to do. So go ahead and finish your sentence before, if you cognitively can remember it.
Actually struggling, Diane. Lucky I have this lovely prompt in front of me. Which I love this image because, you know, you put in all this work and then you have a brain that is now open for business. It's strong, it can see what's going on in the world, and it's you know, you have an animal that is in a state of homeostasis, and obviously that fluctuates throughout the day, but basically open for business.
Yeah, and that's what we want, the dog to be open for business and not dysfunctional, but functional in every single way. So go ahead, ask your questions if you'd like. If not, we're coming up on the top of the hour. We've got about 4 minutes. So while I'm waiting for questions, we can chit chat some more. We've done many of the CEDs together, and not easy cases, because the CED, stress release protocol, is for challenging dogs. Not every dog needs to go through a stress release program, because stress is normal. You have spikes, it comes down. That's what you want to see. You don't want to see them going over threshold. And as you just said, once, and I hear it a lot, the behavior is getting worse. Well, that's because they keep going over threshold. And then one reaction turns into another and another and another and a more intense one. And let's say I've got 5 reactions in a day. That dog isn't coming down for days. And,
yeah.
And the next trigger or stimuli that occurs, they are going to react to it. So we want to keep how we present triggers and stimuli in a way that the dog can cope with it.
That's right. As you're saying, the more the stress is stacked, particularly if it's fear, the response is fear from the animal, the broader the generalization curve is, and I have to do this with my fingers because it's not something I was planning on talking about, which means that the dog is not only locking in a memory for the stimulus, but everything else around it. And that's a whole other topic for us to talk about. But, you know, when you're talking about stacking, that's the effect it has. It goes from kind of just a inverted V to a real kind of half moon kind of graph.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are at the top of the hour, and I want to thank everybody. We had a really good audience today coming in, and I want to thank you all for sharing this time with us, and Maria for taking the time to give us this wonderful presentation. And we will have another guest speaker in 4 weeks, and I will speak on a topic in a couple of weeks and let you know what that's going to be. And Maria, how can they get a hold of you if they want to ask you a question?
They can contact me through my website, which is caninebynature.com.
Okay, I'm going to put that. Okay.
Yeah. Oops.
Put that all in the
Oh, well done.
and in the live stream too, so people can contact you. You had said that in New Zealand, it's not R+ is and the understanding of stress release is not as prevalent as it might be in the United States or in other countries, and you are one of the few that is doing a great work, and keep up everything that you're doing, because it's wonderful.
Thank you.
We could
And
talk
I was really pleased after that article, the interview I did recently, actually with the interest from Australia as well. And you'll be speaking in Australia in October on the topic.
October 12th to the 15th. Yes.
Yes. So if there is anyone from Australia that has tuned into this as well, hopefully we have just piqued your interest a little bit more and given you some information on the path to work.
I hope so. People are saying, thank you, Maria. Very informative.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was very interesting and informative presentation. So I just want everybody to know that this is recorded, and I will post in the group K9 Emotional Detox and on YouTube, where you'll be able to access the talk in its entirety. So thank you. Yay. Maria.
Thank you very much. I kept to time.
Thank you.
Amazing.
And we'll see
Thank
you
you,
all.
everybody.
We'll see you all later. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.